Hello and welcome to the IRS Rail webinar session on cybersecurity for rail digital transformation projects during the pandemic, produced by the International Railway Summit in association with Waterfall Security Solutions. I'm Jules Omura, the Managing Director of IRIS Events, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session. Among the many things we have learned this year is that the importance of being prepared and being able to react quickly to any disruptions. The modern railway system is becoming more and more connected, and the connection speed is about to accelerate with the imminent introduction of FRMCS. Of course, this will bring a lot of benefits from safety and increased capacity to better passenger and freight customer experience. At the same time, just like the global pandemic has highlighted how connected the world is and how easy it is for the virus to spread, the rail network's hyperconnectivity will also make the railway more vulnerable to cyber attacks. This is bad news for railways, which are already suffering from a significant loss of revenue and huge disruptions. Is the pandemic making railways even more vulnerable to cyber attacks? We'll be discussing what the current threat levels are and what we should do to prepare for any potential attack. So I look forward to a lively debate on this very real and possibly imminent threat that the rail sector is facing. We're fortunate to have the support of eminent speakers with us today, and in particular, we are grateful for the support of Waterfall Security Solutions, which allows us to provide this important debate for anyone to watch for free. We're equally grateful to UIC, Network Rail, Indian Railways, and Boston Consulting Group for sharing their expertise with us today. If you want to know how you can support future webinars and participate in the debate, do get in touch with us. We're tweeting live during this webinar, so you can follow us at Rail Summit, and please do use our hashtag IRS Rail Webinars. If you enjoy the session, do continue the debate on Twitter and LinkedIn. There are two ways for the audience to ask questions. You can either raise hand and speak. So in order to do that, if you go to the chat screen, at the bottom of the chat screen, there's a hand icon. So you can click on that, and one of my team members will contact you and will show you how to switch on your microphones. The other way of asking questions is in the Q&A section of your panel. You can type in your question, and we'll publish the questions, so the audience members can vote which questions should be asked, and Stefan will be picking up those questions during the panel discussion. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to our moderator, Dr. Stefan Deutscher. Stefan is a partner and associate director at Boston Consulting Group, where he has worked for almost 20 years, specialized in cybersecurity and IT infrastructure across industries and continents. He has written a number of cybersecurity publications, and he's spoken and moderated debates at so many industry events. I was Googling his name some time ago in preparation for today's webinar, as we all do nowadays, and I was impressed by so many different appointments and speaking commitments he's been engaged in. One of those is his role at the World Economic Forum, where for the last 4 years he's served as project advisor on the topic of advancing cyber resilience. Cyber resilience is, of course, something that we clearly need now more than ever. So I'm delighted to welcome you, Stefan, as the moderator for today's debate on cybersecurity for rail digital transformation projects during the pandemic. Stefan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jules. And good morning, good day, everybody, and welcome. Rail is a really complex environment. So in addition to passenger transportation, there's also freight and logistics, and there's a multimodal environment that spans ship, truck, train, spans several geographies, and there's not just rolling stock, but also tracks, signaling, and also operations control centers that keep rail rolling. And digital transformation of the rail industry has well started, and it is accelerating. So the potential for value creation in this environment is enormous, for instance, for increasing efficiency and quality of transportation along the whole value chain. On the business IT side, for instance, for connecting the different systems, and be it just to make railway builds flow more freely and smoothly. But the same holds also on the side of operational IT. So from providing near real-time transparency over the state of the estate, to enabling telematics, predictive or VR-assisted maintenance, to remote controlling parts of the estate, or even firmware over-the-air updates. The possibilities are amazing. But that also changes the so-called attack surface, and that needs to be carefully managed. Because in my opinion, digital transformation without adequate cybersecurity is, if you pardon the pun, a train wreck waiting to happen, especially in rail and transportation at large. Now, today, I have the honor to chair this panel with 4 senior leaders and international rail and security experts, and of course with all of you on your screens out there, around the topic cybersecurity for rail digital transformation projects during the pandemic. To slice the elephant, because it's a big topic, I'd like to see us over the next 2 hours look at it from 4 angles. First, sort of the security of rail connectivity today. Then the second, what needs to be done to secure rail and rail communication in the future. The third would be what can actually be done to make that happen. And finally, I think it's good to look at security from another angle to explore whether it's just an added cost or whether it actually would help to enable and accelerate innovation and the digital transformation that we're also after. Now, we have only 2 hours, and there are 50 minutes for the panel discussion, so I'm asking everybody to be brief and focused in their contribution, and of course also to keep the questions coming. As Jules said, we have an exciting group of panelists. The backgrounds are extremely impressive and get way too rich to relay in detail in the time we have, but I can only encourage you to read up on them. And the conference page on LinkedIn, it's amazing. So just quickly, Jesus Molina is the Director of Industrial IoT of Waterfall Security Solutions and has over 20 years of experience under his belt, all the way from being a good-natured hacker to being an advisor to actually co-chair of the International Internet Consortium. He holds a PhD in electrical engineering, and as we always used to say when I was still attending university, be careful, he's a triple E, he can do anything. Now, then we have Marie-Hélène Bonneau, head of the security division at the International Union of Railways, who has over 10 years at the USC, where she's currently also part of the COVID-19 task force, and was an auditor for the 22nd National Session on Security and Justice at l'Institut National de l'Haute Étude de la Sécurité et la Justice. And she draws on a very robust background in mathematics and informatical méthode informatique appliquée à la gestion d'entreprise. I think that is roughly business informatics and mathematical informatics, right? Then we have Vish Kalsapura, a principal engineer from Network Rail, who dwarfs pretty much everybody else by having almost 30 years of experience in control systems, working in signaling, in control projects. I think these days it's mainline railway and metro systems, but I understand you also have an experience in defense and a couple other interesting critical infrastructure environments, and an educational background in electrical engineering and HR management and personnel administration, which I think is a great combination to bring the technical and the soft side of things together. And last but by no means least, we have Vijay Devnath, General Manager for Infra and Security and CISO of the Center of Railway Information Systems at Indian Railways, who is drawing on I guess by now almost 25 years of experience in railway infra. I think, Vijay, it's fair to say you are bleeding railway, right? And building on experience in several different railway companies and also an electrical engineering background, plus a couple postgraduate diplomas in different aspects of law. So there's a pattern here, but it's a great panel. I'm very much looking forward to the next 2 hours. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Jesus, who will share his experience from railway segmentation projects during the pandemic with us.
Well, thank you so much, Stefan, for your kind words, and I admire your French, by the way. It has been a great display. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm so happy you're here. I know you're Zoom and webinar agenda is pretty full, so it's always good to have you in this webinar. I'm very excited. I'm going to provide you with our experience during this awful pandemic on the different Rail projects in cybersecurity that has come in. Um, and uh, I will try to focus today in why this is happening, why people are doing cybersecurity. I know this has been tough times for the industry, and you will be wondering why people will start doing that. Um, the second one is after that I will talk about rail segmentation 101, how this works, why segmentation, and then the meat of this will be to discuss all the rail projects or some of the rail projects that we have here at Waterfall. I will try to focus on the where in the network are we doing these projects, what are we doing um, in terms of cybersecurity, and more importantly, the why. Why is this important, or why this segmentation was required? Now, this builds, I have been done a couple of webinars already on segmentation. So we have out there I think, a wonderful ebook that you can download, and it provides the initial view of segmentation, how it relates to current standards such as IEC 62443, TS 50701. So I suggest you download it to get some context. Now, why cybersecurity during this pandemic? And attacks on rail networks are on the rise. This is a known fact. This is because, and I feel your pain. You know, you have been doing all these projects trying to get people to work from home, remote work, do digital transformation to increase efficiency, and that came with attacks. You know, the attacks is that um, the attack surface for rail networks has expanded dramatically. Now, networks that used to be air gap, not they are not, and cybersecurity has been overlooked for a good time in rail networks. There has been not really a strong standard. Hopefully, TS 50701 will fill this void, but there has not been a strict standard on how to apply cybersecurity with some sort of pattern. So now this is happening. Like, people are looking, they are trying to do all these new projects, and they decide to go forward with cybersecurity projects, which is great. Also, they have like looming standards and regulations that are coming. NIS directive, a lot of governments are already applying this, and TS 50701 is coming. People are understanding that they have to start doing some segmentation and other type of security policies. Now, as Stefan just said, rail networks are complex. They mix a level of sophistication in some sorts, some parts. In other parts, they are much, legacy systems which have been there for like 20, 30 years. At the core is the control center, and control centers are very different depending on where you look at. You look at a metro station is very different than the control center in a high-speed rail. However, they all share like similarities on the way we look at the networks. They contain IT networks, they contain more operational networks, even safety vital systems, and all these control centers connect to the different parts of the rail network. We have the stations, and we have, of course, the train that connects either directly to the control center or through the ground. They have, many different networks, and then we have the tracks. So the main issue when we look at this is how do we start? What are the more important things we need to look at, and how do we segment or make sure that these networks are not allowing attacks to come in? So most of our customers, what they begin with is to look at the criticality of the networks, to look at how these networks um, are related to the operation, safety, and data in the system. Now, this is not coming from the the void. Like most, or if not all of the standards suggest for the first step to define the criticality of your networks. And I want to stress that this is not only for segmentation. This is because you need to create a policy, and like a policy cannot be an IT policy because you have operations. So you need to define these networks. What is the criticality of them? IEC 62443, which is the automation standard, has 4 levels of security levels. Senelec TS 50701 suggests 5 levels. They add one more, which is the safety level. Just for simplicity, we can talk about here about like 3 levels. One would be a non-critical, which is an IT system. You have data, of course, you have to protect the data, but it's non-critical in the sense that it doesn't affect operations. Reliability critical, it does affect operations, and safety critical. What we suggest is first, like, apply the policy that refers to this type of criticality, and after that, you can start to use segmentation tools to work between the different networks. What they suggest always is to use weaker, more convenient security for communications between segments with the same criticality. For example, IT segments, you can use software, firewalls, etc., to connect between them. But if you want to connect between a safety critical system and an IT system, we suggest to use unidirectional gateways. Now, this is obviously, the devil is in the details, and I should know I've been looking at network diagrams for trains for just like 2 years, and I have been seeing everything under the sun, from control centers to signaling systems to rolling stock. So, but this in the first approach is to say, well, look at the train. What does it have, the train? So you have the passenger Wi-Fi, you have the onboard operations, you have the train control management system, you have the ERTMS or any signaling system. So you need to evaluate how these networks in the train are interconnected, and just define color code or check what are the different devices and how they exchange data. You should do the same thing for the control center, of course, for the stations, for the tracks. For example, SCADA in the stations, that like connect to the the stairs, for example, in a station, the automatic stairs, it's safety. The TCMS in a train is safety. The tracks, the interlocking is safety systems. So you need to just evaluate this. After that, to do this evaluation, then you start applying policies, and I'm sure my colleagues will discuss this in detail, human policies of like how people should act with safety elements, and like how people should act with non-IT systems. But of course, from our view, we are obviously a segmentation company, a company that provides products that do segmentation. After that, you have to see how you can restrict the flow between these networks, in particular between networks with different level of criticality. Now, at this point, we'll have a poll. I think.
Yes, thank you, Jesus. So if we can show the poll, please. So we will have 5 polls throughout this the next 2 hours, and this is the first of the 5 polls. We would like to keep it interactive, and and so the speakers can adapt to the audience requirements and interests. So the first poll from Jesus is: are you familiar with the unidirectional gateway technology? So if you can choose from the 3 options: very familiar, somewhat familiar, maybe I've heard of it, and not familiar at all. So if you can choose one of these options, this should be fairly quick to decide. We'll close the poll in the next 10 seconds or so. So if you can make your selection, and based on your answer, Jesus can kind of adapt his presentation to the kind of level of knowledge that you have. So if you can answer in the next maybe 3 seconds. So we're closing the poll now. So if you can make your final selection. And yes, if we can close the poll, please. And the result of the poll, you can see under the poll section next to the chat screen, and the closed section now that we've closed the poll. So we have The majority, just over half of the audience, are somewhat familiar, followed by 40% not familiar at all. Chris, over to you.
Right, thank you. So when you have this choice of how to segment, they have two choices, and either you use software tools for segmentation or you use hardware tools for segmentation. As you guys are, half of you are familiar with universal gateway technology. It's great. Some of you are not. The truth is that it is, you have basically two choices. If you have a firewall, a VPN, and other of these tools, even if they're in a box and looks like hardware, they're actually software. They are running a software in a PC, a glorified PC, but it's just like a box with a PC inside, which runs some software that provides, for example, traffic flow protection. But this is software. Software has bugs. Software has problems. If you just Google VPN vulnerabilities, you will see that VPNs, like every day they release 10. You will have to be patching them all the time for security. Um, Universal gateways are the other option, and they provide the security by hardware. The concept is simple. You have in one side a laser that sends information, and in the other side you have a receiver. It can only receive information, so data can only travel one way. Doesn't matter what happens in the corporate network or in the non-vital network of the rail network. People will not be able to send information, so they will not be able to network attack the other system. So this is the hardware. The hardware provides the protection, not the software. The software, um, initial gateways are a combination of software and hardware. The software, what it does, it collects the information in the vital network, for example, an SQL database, and collects with its SQL database, gets the information, sends it one way, and then creates a replica of this information in the other side. We do that with, we have there's many connectors, software connectors that connect with OPC UA, historians such as Pi. So we can collect with everything in the vital network and create a one-way replica of this information. People in the corporate network can access this data, but they cannot access the actual system. And that is the concept. No attack, no matter how sophisticated, can propagate back to the industrial network. So this is the main concept. Now, if you look at how things will be protected, and obviously, again, this I will go into details on how it works. Like you will see that some systems are better protected with firewalls, and some systems are better protected with unidirectional gateways. We in rail industry, now we're seeing a lot of projects that use unidirectional gateways. In particular, for example, Alstom in the last white paper said that unidirectional technology is the best fit for security when the threat level is high. And the truth is that for a lot of systems, in particular for control centers, unidirectional gateways save you a lot of time and a lot of energy because you don't have to patch them. And they are like foolproof. In 10 years, it still will provide the same cybersecurity as today. Firewalls will not. So, I mean, so now I will go to discuss some projects on the control center, on signaling systems, and on actual rolling stock, which is my favorite. My father was a train driver, so for me, trains, is something that always has been of great interest. Right, so project overview, I will talk about projects in control centers, signaling, and rolling stock. I will go for breadth, not for depth. So please ask questions. I've been in all these projects. I know how they work. So please go ahead. Projects, we have seen projects in greenfield and brownfield. A control center is by far the most common, but we are seeing signaling systems in regions with high level of threat, in particular metro systems that have been gapped with bad neighbors and are common targets. I will say that common targets. So you know who you are out there. Signaling systems are going to be the target for cyber terrorism. Rolling stock, we're seeing a lot of projects which are very comprehensive, are fleet-wide, and and also a lot of early beats for new trains. So let's go ahead and look at them because to get the conversation started. First one, a control center. It was a brownfield air gap system. We were working with this customer for 5 years. It started with air gap systems. The first thing they wanted to do is to send information from the control center to the track workers to alert them if the train was diverted. So we replicated SMTP. connected with the software of the control center. After that, it's been escalating, and more information has been sent outside, IDS, intrusion detection for asset management, and also information about OPC UA replicated for maintenance, so it can be used outside. As you can see here, we don't replace firewalls in a sense. We work with firewalls. We unidirectionally send information, and then we put a firewall, and this firewall connects with external network. So we basically segregate the OT network for reliability with the IT network. Another project is a greenfield project in the APAC region. This is a sense out of control centers right now are being built with this security by design. So you look at the different networks you're going to connect, and already you decide to use unidirectional gateways when you have networks that are not your networks, are somebody else's networks. In this case, was a government authority, and the idea here is to send information about alerts and things that happen in the network. This is a replication of syslogs, file servers, and also SQL information. Again, universal gateways from, in this case, vital networks in the system is replicated into the IT network and then sent to these government agencies with cloudy protocols, with RESTful APIs. Signaling systems, extremely interesting. The fact that a lot of metros and a lot of new deployments are looking at using unidirectional gateways to counter the threat of very sophisticated attacks. In this case, it's quite more complex, and how this works, it's out of the scope here, because we are using what is called an in and out. This is a very common deployment, by the way, in energy, which for me is very similar when it comes to contacting signal control networks to operational control networks. But if you are curious, I will be happy to discuss further how this works. And this is something that, in my opinion, is going to be used in the next 10 years widely in every signaling network out there, because you avoid any kind of TCP/IP attacks and other nonsense that should not be in this kind of networks. And finally, rolling stock. Rolling stock is, again, a dear thing for me. We see two things. We see older fleets trying to get out of what is right there, like a mess. Rolling stock, if you don't know it, I will tell you, they are extremely vulnerable right now. I talked with a hacker in a conference, and he told me that he did an assessment and he was able to take over a whole fleet of trains in 2 hours, and that's insane. There is not right now, because these trains has all these different buses like MVV, like a certain kind of bomb that you can like put there and make the train do something really bad. But he definitely said that he could take the cameras and even open the doors. Now, we see like older fleets trying to put a stop to these kind of attacks by using unidirectional gateways that send information from the OT network to the IT network. An added problem with current trains is a lot of them are at Wi-Fi, and obviously Wi-Fi connected directly to OT network. It's a really no. TCS 50701, for example, I think will stop to that. But we are seeing a lot of projects that are reconverting and adding cybersecurity to all their trains, basically connecting the OT networks to the train control bus. Like the information sent from the IT to the OT, OT to IT. Now in new builds, we are going a little bit lower in the stack. With new builds, and you see the difference now. I added, the safety network. The unidirectional gateway is basically sending from the heads where the HMI is and the signaling system is going to send information to the OT network, and this is going to be protected with the unidirectional gateways. This is more efficient and safe, because then the OT network can send information either with a unidirectional gateway again or with a firewall to the IT network, and will be much more precise in what is defending. This is because the IP connectivity in older trains is lower. HMIs and signaling systems are usually connected with older buses, but in new builds, everything will be IP. So you have to protect these safety networks. It cannot be connected directly to the operational network, to the video cameras, etc., that will be in the train. So again, I've gone really fast. I only have 15 minutes. But the idea here I wanted to take is that we are working in a lot of projects. It has been an extremely busy year for us. And if you want to start projects in Rail, cybersecurity projects, you're not going to be alone. There is a lot of people doing these projects in control centers, in signaling system, and in rolling stock. So if you're interested, please ask any questions. I'll be very happy to cover them. Waterfall, we have been in the field for now more than 13 years. We have been working in energy for like a long time. We protect nuclear power plants, oil and gas systems. And in the last 3 years, we have been working in a lot of projects, again, in rail to protect these systems. So thank you very much. And I appreciate your time. And I'm looking forward to the other talks on the panel. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Jesus, for sharing that insight. That's really great account on hands-on cyber projects in the industry. And taking over a whole fleet in 2 seconds, that is scary. That is faster than actually finding a cheap ticket some of these days for one single ride. So
I say 2 hours, not 2 seconds. 2 hours.
Oh, two hours. I'm sorry. Yeah, but no, 2 hours. But still, that is, maybe that's an easy way to get a better ride. Anyway. Really looking forward to connecting with the experience of our other panelists here, and I'd like to hand over without much ado to Marie-Hélène Bonneau, who will give us an insight on the cybersecurity at UIC.
Great, and so before Marie-Hélène joins, I believe we have another poll. So if we can show the poll, please. Yes, so the second poll is, within your company, have cyber attacks increased or decreased during the pandemic? So if you could choose from the 5 options indicated here, so has it increased drastically, increased slightly, or remained stable? I don't know if stable is the right word, but it stayed about the same level, or has it decreased during the pandemic? Or perhaps you don't know, or you're not aware of any attacks before, even during the pandemic. So if you could, this is an interesting question. It gives us kind of insight into how the pandemic has impacted the level of threat or the actual attacks. So if the audience members could vote, please. In the next maybe 10 seconds or so. Again, if you could vote within your company, have cyber attacks increased or decreased during the pandemic? So this would be interesting to see what the insight of the audience members can provide us. So we're closing the voting in the next 3 seconds or so. If you could make the last submissions, and yes, and then we can close the voting. Thank you. And the result you can see in the closed section of the polls, just next to your chat screen. Stefan and Marie-Hélène, if you want to comment on the result. Oops.
All right. So what are we seeing? We're seeing that it's about a tie between attacks increased slightly and remained stable. So is that what you expected, Marie-Hélène? And maybe?
Yes, you will see we have almost these figures with the survey that we did with our members. So it's quite coherent, in fact.
That's good. That's good. Reassuring that this is
you will see in my slides.
It's a quite representative audience that we have.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Stefan, for the introduction you made earlier. So as Stefan said, I'm in charge of security at UIC. UIC, which is the International Union of Railways. And so rail security encompasses the protection of railways against all kinds of external threats, from petty crimes, theft, physical attacks, and also, of course, cyber attacks, until terrorism. So I will provide you today with some elements regarding cybersecurity, which is really becoming a key element of the security strategy of railways, especially during this period where digitalization transformation of railways is ongoing. The current COVID-19 pandemic gives also new opportunities for cyber criminals. There is an Interpol report published in August 2020, which shows an alarming rate of cyber attacks during the lockdown. So before starting, a few words about UIC. As you may know, it's an international organization founded in 1922. We are gathering more than 200 railway companies all over the world, and we are based in Paris. So UIC activities are organized around three main missions. First one on ensuring the promotion of railways as a global means of transportation through seminars, conferences, and representation in different international bodies. Second one on developing and facilitating cooperation among members and sharing best practices. And third one on promoting interoperability, developing and publishing solutions for railway system issues. We call them IRS, a bit like this event. So let's go to the pandemic context. The COVID-19 task force was set up at UIC on the end of February. It's really a good example of UIC mission. The task force brings together UIC members, but also international organizations to work together, learn from one another, and find appropriate ways for the rail sector to respond to this crisis. So many resources are available, several guidance as well as state-of-the-art have been developed within the task force to help railways to better cope with the COVID-19 crisis and make rail more resilient with this concept of rail resilience. Regarding security, within the task force, we focused on some security issues. And you can see here the results of the survey, which was answered by 37 railways in June. So we asked our member, have you experienced an increase of security problem? And in fact, only a smaller part of the responders, 31%, have seen such an increase. Sorry. So it's quite coherent with the poll we just did a few minutes ago. The two main areas which have been identified are vandalism, mainly linked to the decrease of staff, and cybersecurity, especially linked to home office. Phishing is the main threat, but we can also mention malware and ransomware. Just as an example, in July, ADIF, the Spanish infrastructure managers, was hit by a ransomware attack. The attackers threatened to release stolen data if ADIF didn't comply with their demands. So the attack has been controlled by internal security services, and hopefully the infrastructure has not been affected. But it shows how important it is to consider cybersecurity, and it's really a pillar of the comprehensive protection of railways. Let's now look at the railway context. It was already explained in the previous presentation by Jesus. I would like to underline that railways have been for a long time considered as a safe system with regard to cybersecurity issues, mainly because they rely on proprietary segregated networks with specific protocols for management, for communication and signaling. But nowadays, rail technologies are becoming more and more interoperable. harmonized in Europe with TCP/IP for all networks, ERTMS for traffic management, in order to create a seamless railway system in Europe and beyond. So railway systems are more and more connected, open and integrated. They are connected for remote maintenance and remote management. They are also connected to provide customers with real-time information, online application to plan, to book, manage the journey, and many other services required by the customers. Of course, connected object, Internet of Things are also very much developed with cameras, sensors, electronic seals that equipped trains and rolling stock to prevent, detect, monitor, and manage different kinds of events. So digitalization is accelerating. Any object can now be connected together online with the ability for communication and capture data. Regarding communication, the introduction of 5G for rail, the future rail mobile communication system, is one of the most important digital projects that is ongoing at UIC. It will define and specify this new communication system that will replace GSM-R and enable railway control command digitalization. So all this context, harmonization, interoperability, connected object create new vulnerabilities, new criticalities that we need to address. So at UIC, to face this situation, several actions are ongoing. First category of action is related to cooperation between cybersecurity experts. A working group has been set up within the rail system department to explore practical cybersecurity solution from a telecom point of view. There is also the ERISAC, which gather rail cybersecurity experts for sharing of experiences and for coordinating between existing cybersecurity activities. So cooperation is very important in this domain. Another category of action that are ongoing at UIC is related to research. It's essential to analyze the risk and the vulnerabilities, the criticalities, and to develop solutions to better protect the future railway system. So UIC has been involved in several European funded research projects. Two of them are completed. First one, Secret, was focusing on electromagnetic attacks. In fact, with a simple jammer bought on the internet, you can disrupt the GSM-R communication and stop the train. Therefore, the project has delivered a set of recommendations that are available on the website that you can see on the slide. Second project I would like to mention is CyRail, which has also developed a recommendation regarding rail cybersecurity and especially risk assessment methodology, which was already mentioned by Jesus, and developed also a series of protection solutions against cyber attacks targeting rail communication systems. We have also two other projects ongoing where UIC is involved. It's a 4Secure Rail for the implementation of a CSIRT, Computer Security Incident Response Team, to manage cyber attacks. And last one, which just started a few weeks ago, Safety for Rail, address a bit different aspect, which is a combined cyber and physical attacks. This kind of hybrid threat is emerging, and we will address in the project the problem by providing an information system to better prepare and manage such crises and help decision makers to address this new kind of combined threats with the scope of rail and metro systems. So for each of these projects, you can find the results and the ongoing work on the websites indicated on the slide. These projects are really important for cooperation and for looking for the future and find the right solution for the future. I will conclude with some cyber security challenges. And I would like to underline first regarding technical aspects. So how to ensure security by design and provide integrated security for rail products and systems. I think we will discuss it later in the Q&A session. There is also a need to provide cybersecurity standards and security certifications of product and system adapted to the rail transportation sector. Another very important challenge is regarding human factor. There is really a lack of expertise regarding cybersecurity for rail, and that expertise should be developed. Another challenge is to develop the cybersecurity awareness and culture for all the staff in the company, also contractors, and I would say for everyone, because it's one of the main issue regarding cybersecurity. The human aspect is very often I would say the criticality of the systems. So finally, I would like to underline that international cooperation is also very challenging because the information is sensitive regarding cybersecurity. Very often it's managed at the national level, especially the vulnerabilities, the criticalities. However, exchanges on past events, lessons learned, and best practices are key to manage the risk. And that's why we try to develop it as much as possible at UIC. So that's it for my presentation, and I will be very happy to answer your questions during the Q&A session. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marie-Hélène, for this global overview. And now let me use that actually as a perfect segue to ask you and Jesus to stay on stage and maybe ask you a couple short questions. Because, you know, before we can talk about the future, it's probably good to look briefly at the current state of security and rail connectivity. And Jesus, the first question I would like to extend in your direction. From our research at BCG, we see that tech usually is only about 30% of cybersecurity, and that also sort of resonates with what Marie-Hélène just said. But those 30% obviously do matter quite a bit, right? So what is the most troubling aspect on the side of existing technology that you have seen in all of your projects around the globe?
Well, thank you for the question. Cybersecurity involves many different factors, and obviously there is about policy, governance, and others. Technology is only part of it. Now, what I have seen in rail has been a use of IT, a product designed for IT in OT. So products such as firewalls and antivirus being deployed in signaling systems, for example. I mean, or not even deployed at all. I mean, I've seen signaling systems that have nothing, like no cybersecurity whatsoever. And as you say, security through obscurity. They believe that because they are safe, they are secure. And things that are done for safety are not secure. I mean, I've seen safety is about, for example, make sure that the system is replicated enough so if one fails, the other works, you know, so it's still safe. But actually, this increases the potential attacks because there is more attack surface. The same for these protocols that the interlocking uses that are old and they have no authentication and no encryption. These are very, very old legacy systems. So what I suggest is to start using industrial level and protocols for critical systems, not use IT systems or not use anything at all. I mean, this is the main issue I see in rail.
Okay, thank you very much. And Marie-Hélène, when you now sort of extend this to the many companies that you have spoken with, what do you see working well currently in the quest to provide secure connectivity? Are there any patterns that you see that work well?
I think we can say that rail transport is the safest mode of transport, and safety is and has always been the priority of railways. For a long time, and it's still the case for many companies, railways relies on proprietary segregated networks with specific protocol for management, for communication and signaling. So the cyber threat, I would say, for this kind of system is really low. But step by step, the railways are replacing their legacy system with more modern and standard-based infrastructure like TCP/IP to improve reliability, efficiency, customer experience. I would say that safety is part of the railway culture, and cyber risk, as well as any other risk that can have an impact on the safety, are considered from the beginning, especially for critical systems. And assessment and management is a key element of the safety policy, safety and security policy for every rail company.
Okay, thank you very much. And now maybe just two last 60-second questions to each of you. Jesus, you have the honor to go first. We often hear that security issues can turn into real safety nightmares, right? And then there's other people who say, well, it's not so bad. There's so many safety controls already. So how bad is it really today already? Is there a burning platform, and what are the issues?
Right. So the study of safety and security together is still an ongoing research project. We have done that in the Industrial Internet Consortia, and there's a lot of smart people doing there, and it's a really complex. So I don't go to there is a direct way of doing cybersecurity and safety together, because right now it's a study project. However, I will say, and TS 50701 says really clearly. A network, a critical network that is not cyber secure is not safe. Period. Safety has not looked at this added communication that can have a threat there, can have malware there. So how bad it is? I think is bad in the terms of cybersecurity, but payloads are difficult to implement. So payloads that affect safety are difficult to implement. These payloads are not there in the wild yet, but in other industries such as energy, we have seen them. We have seen black energy. We have seen others. We have not seen that in rail, but they will appear. I mean, when there is a target, they will appear, these payloads. But these payloads don't exist right now.
Thank you. That sounds like we have a little window of opportunity to start fixing things. And maybe now, Maria-Hélène, to you, when you look at digital transformation that is coming to rail, do you see cybersecurity sufficiently considered from the start in new initiatives? Is rail ready for digital already?
I think to answer your question, I will take the example of the digital platform that have been set up 5 years ago at UIC to share best practices among members and develop the digital cooperation projects. And the first conference, which was held in Washington in 2016, for this first conference, the main topic, in fact, this digital conference was digital technology and railway security. So security was the first aspect addressed when speaking about digitalization. There were really a big focus on cybersecurity. So I would say, yes, this is cybersecurity is a key element of the digital transformation, and we started with this aspect in the digital platform.
Wonderful, thank you. So it is on the radar. That's good to know. Yeah. And with that, I'd like to thank you for making yourselves available for these questions, and would love to move on right away to our next presentation, because Vish will now relate to us some cyber challenges that the digital railways are facing based on his vast experience in actually, I guess, dealing with them. So Vish, over to you, please.
So we will go into the poll to start with before Vish's presentation. So if we could show Vish's poll, please. Can we show the poll? Yes, thank you. So the third poll for today, legacy technology on the railway network means we can never implement security features completely. Do you agree with this statement? So you have 4 options to choose from: fully agree, somewhat disagree, or fully disagree. So if you could choose one of these options, please, audience members, and if you can, once again, if you can choose fairly quickly. Legacy technology on the railway network means we can never implement security features completely. So based on the a lot of different, I guess, technologies being used from many decades ago, still being used on the network. Does that mean it's impossible to implement security features 100%? So if you can respond in the next 5 seconds or so, if you can choose one of the 4 options, and then we'll move on to Vish's presentation. Okay, so I think majority of the audience has responded. If you haven't responded, if you can choose now, and we'll close the poll. Please, can we close the poll? So the results are now in now in the closed section. Stefan?
All right. So we have a clear preference or a clear impression that people either somewhat agree or fully agree. So 65% agree to some extent that legacy tech is actually hindering us in implementing security features completely. Vish, what do you say? You do this every day, right? So
yes,
you must have a lot of scars if that is true. Please, over to you.
Tell me about it. This is absolutely not surprising at all. In fact, like, what surprises me is people did say somewhat disagree, and it will be an interesting thing to know as to how they thought it is like not correct. But anyway, that's exactly what I'm going to be trying to address in my own presentation. So when I actually looked at the theme of the presentation, 2 things jumped out at me: rail and digital. And I won't talk about transformation, because the Oxford Dictionary actually says transformation is a complete change of something, especially so that the thing can be improved. And there is also a saying which says, if it ain't broke, why fix it? So are they complementary to each other? Of course not. So the biggest challenge in any transformation project, in my opinion, is to try and figure out as to what exactly you mean by digital. There are a lot of interpretation about what people think digital is and what it actually is. And from an infrastructure point of view, when we look at the entirety of the railway, a lot of things jump up. So there's always a weakest link. So when we look at the railway as a whole, we want to improve the security aspects and remote access aspects in a safe and secure manner, not for one element of the railway, but for the entirety of it. So in order to do that, we've got to treat railway as a system, which has got lots of systems. So in my opinion, and Jesus and Mary Helen had actually touched on this in their presentation, that there are a lot of things which come together to actually form a system. Now, and as you can see there, like, the security, which is just one tiny bubble, is sort of hidden between a lot of things about, like, the trains, the passengers, the freight, the control center, maintenance regime, so on and so forth. Now, if you look at the time horizons of all these things, more often than not, security is not in the forefront. That's partly because as a railway infrastructure manager or as a railway operator, the day-to-day challenges is actually trying to run the railway. Things about trying to safeguard a thing which hasn't happened or which is going to happen in the future, to be very fair, is not in the front of the mind. So more often than not, people will always talk about things like control center, the passengers, the train by itself. But what we are trying to say here is, like, in order to have a complete and secure environment, and I think this is something which Mary Helen touched, is we've got to look at the holistic view of how the entirety of the railway system is actually operating. Now, so clearly it all talks about teamwork and identifying the stakeholders. Now, in this slide, like, there are two things which I want to actually bring out, and which we as an industry have not been doing very well. One is trying to find out what is it exactly that travelers want. Now, the fare-paying public is actually a very important stakeholder in the working of the railway. Would they like to be informed? Would they like to have an up-to-date information about how the journey is going to take? And all this thing comes in from a third party people, because we, the infrastructure manager, we are not in the business of actually trying to shift data from one place to another, right? Even though we can claim that we are good at it, but to be very fair, we are not. And analytics provider. Now, one of the things which has happened is when we move to digital, things like analytics becomes very important. Data analytics, there are big companies outside of the railway who actually do this, and they do this for a living. So what we as an industry need to do is to try and embrace the change, because moving forward, the railway is going to become digital. So, like, the past presenters have actually touched on the false sense of security which is actually provided, given the fact that some of our systems are actually vendor locked. They are not widely used. So any potential hacker might have to know the innards of that particular system before they try and do any damage. But with the move to the new digital technologies, that is going to be history. So we are now talking about depending on other network providers, other companies who will be giving us support. So we need to be trusting them. And we also need to treat them with the same kind of rigor what we have within the railway, which brings into my next point about, so this is a project which I have worked on and I'm currently working on. As you can see here, like, this project is called Digital Railway System of Systems project. So wherein we are trying to integrate onboard trackside and the actual railway using digital technologies. And I've got some scars, what Stephen mentioned, from this particular project. Whilst it looks quite easy on the drawing board, in reality, there are a few challenges. Now, the challenges is basically, do we understand our risks? And the reason why, like, in this particular slide, what I'm trying to show is that the system engineering risks about safety, reliability, they are well documented. They have been used over the years. Safety, like, we've got a directive called CSM, Common Safety Methods, that is also well documented. So any railway professional, worth the salt, they would know about a safety case. They would know about system engineering process. But if you ask them about a security case, that's the area which we will need to be sort of developing, because it is not very widely known. Now, how do we make this happen? So I just wanted to discuss one of the case study which we had done. So this is a very simple network, and what you see here is used in nearly 80 to 85% of the railway installations around the world. And I'm kidding you not. So we call this either a signal box or a control center, depending upon which country you are. That is connected through some sort of servers with a rudimentary firewall, and that can be accessed by our good friend, the maintainer. Many years ago, I used to be a maintainer, and everybody, I think it is in human nature to try and make the job easy. So there will always be access points into the system to this maintainer, because you can't expect the maintainer to be trudging up to the middle of the railway to sort out something if it could be done in the comfort of the home. Right. So, and this is how a more modern architecture would look like. So we've got demilitarized zones, so we've got different VPN server, and all the things which Jesus mentioned about, like the hardware and software protections. We are trying to implement it. Now, guess what happens if we try and show this particular architecture within our own organization? So the first challenge is, why are we doing what we are doing? Right? So this not only comes from the people who are using it, but also there are various things like including our own management, because it is a cost, and I think it is human nature about resistance to change. Now, when we put something new in there, what is the baseline against which we are going to measure whether it has been a success or not? So let's take a case of wherein there has been no hacking attempt, things have been running smoothly, we are just trying to upgrade it for the sake of modernizing it and to offer a better service. But because we don't have a baseline, the challenge is to find out what is better. And then there is always a challenge about standardization. So what I mean by that is, if there are no standards, the challenge is it will be implemented. When I say it, the solution is going to be implemented in multitude of different ways. And there's a classic lack of understanding, because nobody tells the cold face, if I were to put it this way. So if I were to walk into a control center, traditionally, and with no disrespect to our suppliers and the consultants who are working on the project, they would naturally try and put together a PowerPoint presentation to try and make people understand as to what the change is. Not more often than not, people just do not understand it. It's just because it isn't close to anything they're working to. So if I were to take an operational operator, railway operator, all they are interested in is basically making sure the train runs to the timetable and they go home, right? So, and this is very human. So what I'm trying to say here is, I think we just need to expand the horizons about any change which we are trying to implement in a manner that it could be understood. And all this was even more relevant during this recent pandemic. It's partly because, going back to my previous thing where I spoke about risk, we never knew what was the probability or the impact of the pandemic. So we knew like the vulnerability and the threat aspects. So clearly we underestimated the entirety of the risks. So during the pandemic, it has been a challenge to roll out new initiatives, even though they were in the pipeline. It's just because we, as infrastructure managers, actually underestimated the seriousness and how the people would actually uptake it in their day-to-day jobs. Now, we've got like the railway today and how is it going to look into the future, right? So I'm not going to read out the slide. One of the biggest things what I'd like to take at this particular point is, in order to enable a business transformation, we as an industry need to look outside our box. We need to get in touch with the consultant and the suppliers who do the integration, the security, the patching, the update, like for their day-to-day lives. And we just need to expand our own horizons. So that's one of the things which I'd like to sort of explain to the audience, that this is what we're going to do. So we are all about people, process, and technology. Technology is there, like has been mentioned by my other co-presenters earlier on. organizations like UIC are trying to put together the process, which is very good, because that's what is going to sort of help us. There will be a defined standard, there will be a defined way as to how to achieve it. People, interesting, because not everybody is the same. And I think Mary Helen also sort of mentioned about human factors. That's exactly what this is. So the challenge is, like, as a teamwork for this thing, we can actually make it happen. But it really does involve people talking to each other and, you know, like trying to get on ahead with ourselves in terms of technology and the standards. So teamwork is definitely very important, from my opinion. You know, like I said, the stage is people have fallen asleep. Please wake up, and thank you for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Visha. I think it's quite an exciting topic to point out the lack of standards, but obviously you can't really wait until things are standardized because the attackers don't. And with that, I'd love to shift over to the view of a really large railway network and to Vijay Devnath, who will share his point of view on Nation First, then Railways, after a quick poll. I think we have another poll, Jules, right?
That's right, yes. This is the fourth poll coming up. Yes, so if you can respond, please, the audience members. What is the most cost-effective method to separate enterprise IT from critical OT/IoT? So if you can choose one of these four options. There's a bit of echo, I think. Maybe Vijay, you could use, I don't know if you're using a headset. Thank you. So there are four options to choose from. Air gaps with humans transferring data, or one-way data transfer APIs, or is it using simple digital diodes like firewalls, or is it intelligent machine learning-based systems which may distinguish various data types? So if the audience members can select one of these options, please. And I think Vijay is configuring settings once again for the audio. If you have a headset you can use, then it will avoid the echoes that we're hearing. Great. So if you could take the next 10 seconds or so to respond, which of these four will be the most cost-effective method to separate enterprise IT from critical OT, IoT. If you could respond, please, in the next few seconds, and then we'll close the poll. Great. So a couple of seconds. If you can make your last selection, and we'll close the poll. Vijay, I don't know if you are you able to use a headset or something like that? Just there's a bit of an echo.
No, unfortunately, I don't have a headset. But I think now the echo must have gone.
Yes, it's gone now. Yes, thank you. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let's maybe quickly look at the outcomes of the poll, shall we? Because I think this is quite interesting. So we see that almost 70% of the respondents believe in software. So one-way data transfer APIs or intelligent machine learning-based systems are considered the most cost-effective method to separate things. That is surprising to me. I don't know how you feel about it, Vijay, and how this squares off with your experience in a large railway network. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you, Stefan, and good afternoon. What should I say? Good evening here, everyone. Thanks for responding to the poll. Actually, I have responded to the one-way API, but the actual situation in my railways is the first one. We actually use humans to manage the air gap between IT and OT. Now, because we are, I think, running short of time, so I should confine myself to my area of presentation because discussing what we do and how we do will be number one slightly out of my scope because we cannot discuss the details in a global forum just like that. Second thing is that given the limited time, I have to focus on the things which we are doing now during the pandemic and which we plan to continue in future. As quickly, I will come back to the focus point here is that railways is a government department or a government service in India, and it's now considered a national critical information infrastructure. So there is always a focus on disrupting its operation because it hurts the national economy. So there is a threat from external agents, our friendly neighbors, or two, but that is more or less effectively controlled through the national level agencies. Coming back to my own domain, I think I should clarify that I am looking after the information security part of the digital initiatives in the Indian Railways. It's not to do anything with the physical security, which is a vast domain in itself, and which is managed by a separate paramilitary force called Railway Protection Force. We help them digitally in managing their feeds and their application systems and the network, but not directly because the assets protection, etc., they look after themselves. Am I having the control? Yeah. What I look at this the digital security in two parts. One is the digital landscape which we are now having in railways is very, very vast, starting from the applications which we host and manage here, from development to implementation and then maintenance also. And now the coming of intelligent devices which are rolling stock mounted or maybe stationary station mounted systems, which we love to call them operation technologies and now increasingly IoTs. But ultimately, they are all generating data, and the data which we are trying to manage and secure at whatever way, all across. Internet has added the cyber domain, or you can say unknown, into the mix, and which we are trying to find very hard to manage because, as you know, there are multiple operators, multiple protocols, and a lot of interplay between them, because despite having a large network of railways owned network, we have to take standby services from the other private networks as well. So managing them, integrating them, and balancing their disputes is a big work in itself. Security, as you can see, it goes behind. The safety as is in railway safety, that is the train running safety, operational safety comes first, and then the digital platforms and their safety comes the next. Other panelists from UIC and Network Rail have already discussed the increasing threat to the digital ecosystem. I will not go much into that. These are my current, say, risks which I need to focus on my day-to-day work, or I have to keep tabs on with my colleagues in the operational side and in the application management side. We have a lot of applications and operational system connecting to us, which include the control office, as discussed. Signals, they are not directly connected, but yes, the data comes onto our systems, applications. Then there are solid state interlocking, root relay interlocking, SCADA, traction power control, where I used to work earlier. I happen to come from the maintenance side, which I did for 10 years in traction power control management and locomotive maintenance management. Most of these systems are air gapped with the digital applications, and this air gapping is done by humans. As I told you, we have not done direct interfacing yet. We are hoping to do it in near future, but there are concerns. Real-time information management is also done by the applications, and mostly the business continuity is done by the employees and our third-party contracts, which we have, as I told you, the backup networks and to some extent the employees on contract. Asset management is in a big way done in the digital applications, O&M. Now we are bringing in a GPS-based real-time information system of location, train locations. I will not go into details. Again, different, very large domain. Then RFID tags, which we are fitting into our rolling stock, and we will be monitoring them in real time. GIS mapping is also going on in a big way, and it will be mapping our vast assets which we have. Approximately 8,000 stations spread all over India. Human resource is our biggest asset as well as a threat vector as well, because more than half of it is not technically and cyber literate, and we can't do that also in because they are very geo spread out all over India. And we have finance and accounts as usual, which we could do work from home and in a very formal fashion. Risks are, as I told you, employees, their trust is quite in doubt. Machines, contracts, everything is a risk which we take. And there are some natural risks also, because some of our remote locations are not always accessible through the digital network. So we have to take those risks because we cannot reach them.
I think we've lost Vijay for a short while. Let's see if he can come back. I think he's coming back. Vijay, I think you're trying to come back. I don't know if you can hear us. So refreshing the browser usually works. So maybe you can try that if you can hear me. Or Stefan, we
seem to have some intermittent problems there.
Yes.
Oh, Vijay, back you are.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, I'm back.
You're back.
Sorry, I think I lost the connection somehow. Anyways, I will quickly conclude. As I told you, we have 1.3 million people, employees, and approximately 400,000 are supposed to be digitally connected, and they should be using our systems from one time to other. For them, we are embarking on a massive training program where we are trying to get them trained right from the stage of recruitment. In their training, we have a large number of training schools where we want to train them, and we also want them to be trained in service, because applications are upgrading all the time, and they need to be trained on the new technologies which we are bringing in. And similarly, processes have to be updated because as the systems and digital transformation projects are taking root in vast geography, we need to update our processes, which are quite old, and they are tuned to manual systems, so we have to update them digitally. And also there is some push is required in every stage where people or my employees are somewhat incentivized or pushed to use the digital systems in a proactive way. They try to learn and use them optimally. Then coming to the technology, we are embarking upon use of thin clients in some of the applications like unreserved ticketing and the passenger reservation system. We have shifted to thin clients and VDI platforms also, but we want to bring them on other applications also, where the dependence on the end computing platforms, their patching, their updates, the replacements due to failures, all those things are taken care of by these server controlled technologies. Privileged identity and access management is a very big area where our officers, or we can say senior and privileged human resources, they want convenience to over the processes and rules. We want to control that through identity and access management platforms, which we are trying to roll out slowly. Then there is a visibility issue. As I told you, remote areas, the network visibility and feedback is slow and sometimes not available at all. So their connectivity and performance is also an issue. So security takes a backseat because somehow we have to get the trains moving. So the fight is between whether to run the business or to do cybersecurity or follow the process. So sometimes we have to compromise and lose out or relax the standards in certain locations so that the business continues. Then there are some, we do not have a sector regulator yet, but there are digital security regulators in India, both the CERT-In and NCIIPC, they are always watching over us, and almost on a daily basis, we have to report on incidents and all those things. And the Railway Board is also now becoming quite aware of the OT and IT security, industrial control system security. And we are getting some traction in the board policies as well. So it's always work in progress. Cybersecurity and operational technology security. And we hope that the UI
I think Vijay was concluding his statements there, so maybe we can move on to the last poll and see if he comes back after the poll. But we can move on to the panel discussion, and we can invite him to conclude his statements there. So the last poll for today, audience members, the railway sector recognizes and proactively deals with cyber challenges. Do you agree? So if you could answer one of the, if you can select one of the three options, could not agree more with this statement, or yes, but more should be done, or nowhere near enough, so much more needs to be done. The railway sector recognizes and proactively deals with cyber challenges. Are we doing enough to deal with cyber threats? So if you can respond to this poll, and I think Vijay is back. So once we close the poll, we can invite you, Vijay, to perhaps conclude, and then we can move on to the panel discussion. So audience members, if you could make your final selections, and so that the railway sector recognizes and proactively deals with cyber challenges. Cannot agree more. Yes, but more should be done, or nowhere near enough. Much more, a lot more needs to be done. So we'll be closing this poll in the next 5 seconds or so. If you can make your final submissions, if you haven't yet. And now, if you can close, please, then Stefan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Vijay, that was perfect timing of disconnecting after your concluding remarks. So let's maybe look at the outcomes of the poll. It's quite impressive to see that the participants on the call agree that more should be done. The disagreement is how much more should be done. Some say more should be done, others say a lot more needs to be done. But there's nobody who thinks we are currently in a sufficiently comfortable place for what's coming in the future. And I think this is why we're having this great webinar. And I'd like to touch on a couple of the issues around all of that in the panel session for the next, now about 35 minutes or so. No, 25 minutes. We're a bit behind, but I think the depth of the presentations was really well worth it. And what I'd like to do is say let's touch on a couple questions in a rapid fire mode, sort of 60 seconds per answer, so we can cover a lot of ground, and also some of the very rich questions from the audience that are coming in. So. Maybe we start with the security of connectivity today here, and would like to pose the first question to you, Jesus, right away. We heard a bit about the air gap, and we also then poll. So, is the air gap still useful, or is it going out of style in your opinion? And does security by obscurity still work, like in the old days of SCADA?
Well, like Vijay say, it's everywhere. I mean, right now air gaps in force signaling systems and air gaps in metros. It's really common to have air gaps. Air gaps, though, and it's interesting that you will think that I say that, are extremely dangerous because at the end of the day, you have to move the data. And as Vijay say, somebody needs to move the data. These are people. People need to be trained to move the data. They are going with USB drives around, like USB disks. And also, you need to enable digital transformation. Intrusion detection systems, for example, are much better prepared to deal with the amount of data you're going to send them from the switches if they are in the cloud. For that, you need to transfer the information. You cannot do it with a disk. Again, air gaps are here, but they need to be phased out. And our technology, for example, allows to send information one way. Still, you are air gapped in the sense that people cannot connect to you, but you can transfer this information. It is required to, basically go ahead with your trip to be more connected. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you for your insight here. That resonates with. Oh, we have a lot of echo now. That resonates with a discussion I had recently at a cybersecurity and energy conference I hosted, where one of the topics I found myself discussing with the panelists was the end of air gap. I found that quite interesting. Now, Vish, when we think about the practicalities of things, we just heard from Vijay something about mandatory auto patching, which I think is really an important protection mechanism. How well does that work in the systems that are currently in operation in your experience, and sort of what alternative, maybe compensating controls do you see that could work where auto patching perhaps doesn't work yet?
The simple answer to that question is it doesn't work at all. So even though it is there in theory, but in practice, auto patching is a challenge. There are access and trust issues with around auto patching, and I think the reason why it doesn't work is because A, there are no standard policies, and B, the way to get over it, in my opinion, would be sort of improved architecture. So I know people touched on safer by design kind of things. So with the introduction of these things, I think it will help auto patching.
All right. Well, that's not very encouraging. But Jesus, now if you think about this, everybody talking on top of all of that about the convergence of IT and OT, also in rail. So how far do you actually see this progressed in the industry, and do you see maybe any regional differences in your work?
Yes, there is regional differences. First, in locations where the threat level is very high and you know who you are, then they take cybersecurity much more seriously, and they tie it with safety. In regions that there is not as this threat, they take it slower. Now, what I have to say too is that there is in some regions there is a push from the IT people to push for IT wide cybersecurity practices, which in a lot of times are incorrect. I mean, I've been working in oil and gas, and this is because you have the signaling system engineers in one side, which are the OT people basically, but they don't know cybersecurity. And then you have the new kids on the block, which they are hired from an IT background, and they know cybersecurity, but they only know about data cybersecurity. They don't know about operations cybersecurity, which is quite different.
All right, thank you. And Vijay, one question for you, since you mentioned in your presentation compulsory information security audits for any systems, which obviously would be the gold standard. But how well does that scale actually to a large organization, and how sustainable is that given the scarcity of cyber talent?
Yeah, good question. And the answer is like Vish. It's not physically possible. We do it by the way of sample audit. If a system is going to say 20 places, we will audit it for say 5 places, depending upon the power available, and we will defer the remaining audits for the later part. And we also use sometimes the talent from the private sector, where there are empaneled auditors available, and we use them locally. The places where our auditors cannot, physically reach, we will use them there. So we try to cover them in as short as possible time. But yes, there are gaps in terms of human resource as well as the time available.
All right, thank you very much for this open account. And there is one question that I'd love to throw at all of you from the Q&A section, and feel free to volunteer or volunteer somebody else to answer it. The question comes from Rafael Santos. And the question is, what is the greatest barrier that companies in rail face when trying to implement or procure OT cybersecurity solutions? There seems to be focus on IT cyber, but OT cyber appears to be an afterthought. Any volunteers?
Okay, let me go first then.
All right. I was about to volunteer you. Thank you.
Thank you. Very valid question. The challenge is many of the OT companies are still coming up to speed with the whole concept of like cybersecurity and detection, and trying to proactively prevent it. So whilst there has always been this challenge between the IT and OT, now there is more of a collaborative effort. And I come from a control systems background, but then I can give a talk on cybersecurity, partly because we within the organizations, and I can speak for many organizations, are trying to bridge the gap between OT and IT. But at the same time, the suppliers are also taking proactive steps to come up to speed. So right. It's not all doom and gloom. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train.
And it's hopefully not a bonfire either. Please, Vijay.
I fully agree with Vish. The systems are improving between OT and IT. But having come from the OT side to IT side, I will say that for the OT people, the choices between whether to run or to secure. So the run always wins. The secure goes later. Of course, the human safety and the train safety is always top priority. Digital safety comes afterwards. And in this aspect, the OEMs like Waterfall and all, they can build the security into the products themselves, the OT, IT bridging products. If the security is built into them, when there is no escape, you have to do that. So
okay.
Kind of scenario will be better. Otherwise, it is very difficult to convince the OT people to look at digital security and all those stuff. It's
all right.
Not
okay, thank you very much, Vijay, for this additional perspective. And now, with the understanding of where we are, let's try to grab a glimpse of the future. So, of what needs to be done to secure rail and the rail communication. Now, in the poll just now, we saw that the majority of the audience thinks that the railway sector isn't doing enough to deal proactively with cyber challenges. Marie-Hélène, does that surprise you? Do you see cyber considered in projects from the start, or still somewhat as an afterthought in the industry? You're on mute. You're on mute. All right, you're not on mute.
In fact, I'm managing security issues at UIC, and one of the main principles for ensuring security is the security by design. It's applicable when you build a station. It's true for building a train, and of course also when you design an ICT tools or any other digital solution. So the system provided by the industry need to be secured by design, and integrated security is always a must. At railway level, risk assessment need to be performed to identify the vulnerabilities, the threat, to determine the risk, and manage this risk. So I would say here a lot of cooperation is needed between railways, providers, authorities responsible for the information system security. And that's the reason why I would say UIC try to gather all these different stakeholders to exchange and work together. And I would like to mention ISAC, the Urban Rail Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which was set up last year. And it's really a good example of platform bringing organization of the rail sector together to discuss cybersecurity issues and development, and try to enhance all this cybersecurity. So,
all right, thank you. And now back to some maybe more technical topic, Jesus. I mean, we heard about firewalls versus unidirect, or in addition to unidirectional gateways, to protect against unwanted flow of information. Now, how can intended information flow be secured in order to support, for instance, control of physical objects, signaling, and so on?
Yes, that's a great question. There is a misconception that unidirectional gateways are data diodes. They are not. They are a very sophisticated combination of software and hardware that basically applies to any use case that doesn't allow arbitrary data in. A lot of people believe in shiny objects, that an algorithm with deep packet inspection of IDS can resolve all their problems. I did my PhD on IDSs 20 years ago, and back then we thought IDSs will resolve everything. They did not, because it's a fighting game. Unidirectional gateways, for example, in our products, have a lot of different hardware combinations. You can have a unidirectional gateway that sends information only out and receives information in another channel. Like, we have people using iPads, to go back. We have what is called the flip. The flip is unidirectional all the time, and then when data is required to go in, it flips. It can send data in. It's still unidirectional. There cannot be a TCP/IP connection, but you can send files, patches back in. So the flip is very well used in Rail, and these are combinations. So this is not the problem. The problem is the arbitrary policies of you can send anything anywhere you want to the OT system. I see people VPNing into signaling systems, VPNing into rolling stock, and that's insane. You need to have policies that are well structured on how data should flow in an OT system. That is the key concept.
All right, thank you. So people, process, technology, that's important. And Vijay, let me come back to auto patching again, because it really caught my attention. You mentioned also that, of course, this needs OEM support, right, to make this even possible. The question is, how can the rail industry actually win the cooperation of the OEMs and of the independent software and hardware makers here, and how can it handle the obsolescence issues of today's solution, which become tomorrow's legacy?
Good question, Stefan. But there is a finance angle to this. Digital technology will continue to move as it is moving. Whether it is Moore's law or any other laws, they will continue to innovate. Operational technology, because of its inherent attachment with the rolling stock or the physical infrastructure, will move slowly. So I think locomotive is built for 30 years, whereas the digital system going into it may be built for only 10 years. So it needs to be replaced 3 times over. And it is physically as well as financially not possible to have such long time frames for both OT as well as its IT digital parts. So I think there will be always a bridging required, and I can't see that much in future where both can upgrade simultaneously. So there will be always a market of these firewalls or diodes or APIs, and this is likely to continue because
it's an
I don't
race,
see
right?
a very immediate future.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. And maybe last question over to you, Vish. I've been thinking that to attack OT, you may not even need to hack it, right? I mean, it may just be enough to hack the humans that are operating OT, for instance, by showing them wrong data. So what can be done against this? Is there any magic fix?
I don't think so.
Ooh.
It is a continuous learning, in my opinion, and data is something which has been sort of challenging. So what we've done is, like, within the railway, there is something called the dynamic data and the dynamic data and static data. So there are policies and procedures in place for anything, like when people talk about European vital computer interlocking. They've been around for 30, 40 years, and there is a process around this particular data handling and how that is verified, validated. But in terms of the dynamic data, which is where the humans actually come in, it is still, the policies are being developed, and I'm sure UIC is sort of instrumental in that particular aspect, but also the other industries. So it is a continuous learning process, and it is a clear and present danger, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. The plot thickens, as the saying goes. So let's see what these evolving needs now require and how they can best be handled. Vijay, you already touched on the issue of the difference between depreciation cycles and assets like locomotives and OT. So let me maybe skip that question because you basically preempted me. But Maria-Elena, I have one for you, and that would be when we look at the speed of the technical progress on the one hand, and then the approval cycles on the other, for instance, for railworthiness and all that type of thing. What can be done to avoid being outrun by technological progress?
Difficult question, but I would try to answer with the UIC experience. And we at UIC, we try to anticipate as much as possible the needs of our members, and we developed cooperation projects with our members. And I would like to highlight a very important project within UIC Rail System Department, which is the introduction of 5G in the control command railway systems. 5G will replace GSMR, and UIC has launched a global program to define and specify this future radio mobile communication system with many activities, including, of course, security, which will be addressed from the very beginning in the description of the architecture and technology. So 5G for rail will definitely be an enabler for digitalization in the future, and especially for the control command systems. There is another one which is also very important, is the digital modeling of the railway system.
Mm-hmm.
UIC started some years ago a program to define a descriptive model and the language for the railway system. So the objective is to build a common data model for railways, including all necessary dimensions. So all these examples of UIC cooperation project are really some of the enablers, I would say, for the digitalization of railways. The basic
thank you.
Need to have.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Jesus, I have one more for you, because I remember reading in one of your many publications that are actually almost like detective stories. You're saying what is or appears to be secure today may become insecure tomorrow. Very simple sentence, but it got stuck in my brain. So what does this mean for digital transformation projects in the rail sector, and how should they handle cybersecurity in this context?
Cybersecurity will be handled in a way which is future-proof. That's because a lot of the implementations like control centers or rolling stock, this will last for 10 years. If you rely on an algorithm that has to be updated or patched, or a system that needs to be evaluated every other day, like VPN systems, then it's not going to be future-proof. It's going to be 1 year, 2 year proof. we have implemented unidirectional gateways in oil and gas refineries, and this thing has been there for like the last 6 years. And that doesn't matter if the threat level increases; this is not going to be problematic. And the threat level always increases. Ransomware, I published a paper 9 years ago, and people thought I was an idiot to thinking that public key crypto was going to use in malware. They said that's idiotic. It's never going to happen. It's too expensive computationally for using in a virus, because people think in a
Famous
virus
last
very
words.
small. Yeah. 5 years ago, one happened. 6 years ago, two happened, and 7 years ago, 1,000 happens. So threats you cannot really understate. May take time, but they will get there. So it will be future proof.
Thank you. That's a perfect segue for a question I have for you, Vish. And that also is reflected in a question in the audience. I'm seeing security spending of companies actually starting to shift in many industries from protection towards more of detection and response, because as Jesus just said, sooner or later the threats will get there. So could this be also applied to rail to handle the faster speed of digital innovation, and how? To make it easy on you, you got 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. The answer to that is yes, and we have already seen some of the steps which has helped us in innovation. An example is possessions. So there's a lot of art around taking a possession. The railway has to be shut. A lot of people talk, but with the introduction of digital technology, the time and the entire thing around possession has actually come down by nearly 400%. So it's a big time saving for us.
All right, cool. Thank you. 30 seconds. I admire you more and more. So that leaves us some time to move to the question of what about innovation for the business? There's a lot of work ahead apparently, and I see people worry that security may just add cost and slow renovation. So let's stay with you, Vish, for saying, is security just a cost of business, or can it enable and accelerate innovation in rail?
It will enable and accelerate, and pandemic was a perfect example wherein some of the measures which was initially thought of as being, like an IT, just another IT rollout, has actually worked in our favor. People have started to realize that, stitching time saves 9. So yes, it will accelerate. It will give rise to innovations, and people are ready to embrace new technology more than ever.
Thank you. And Vijay, what's your take on this from the point of view of a general manager of a very large network? On security enabling innovation rather than just being a cost.
Stefan, I think Vijay cannot hear you.
Oh, Vijay cannot hear me. Good. Yes. Then let's maybe skip this and let's move on, Marilena, to a question around the innovation. Also, when you look at the members of UCI, do you see them go about securing the whole ecosystem beyond the company and what does that do to their ability to drive digital innovation?
Complicated question. I think security for safety critical system is not an option, in fact. It's mandatory, so therefore it's a prerequisite, I would say, to enable and accelerate innovation in the rail sector. And I don't know if it answers to your question, but we need security to enable innovation. Cannot be especially for critical systems.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. And Jesus, you have the honor of getting the last question here. In the wake of your projects, what's your experience here? Do you see speed up of digital innovation at companies that you supported to get better cybersecurity? If so, why is that?
It was hard to hear, but can you repeat again?
Yes, when you look at the companies that you supported with cybersecurity projects, do you see a speed up in the capability to innovate in companies that are actually investing in cybersecurity?
Yes, actually, yes, because in many cases they just unlock the information. For example, imagine you have an air gap, and then you want to do some predictive maintenance or some project about intrusion detection, even or join your security operations centers and make it available company wide by using cybersecurity. Which is sound, like in our case, universal gateways, you're able to send this data outside and use it for your projects, for your digital transformation projects, without any kind of network possibility of attacks. So these people are able to innovate by using sound projects. But also I have to say that in other terms, also I have seen outside the realm of segmentation and universal gateways, I've seen a lot of colleagues in intrusion detection and in using authentication systems that are able to expand and improve the operations just by using sound security practices. It's not something that they will allows the company to grow, instead of like being a restrictive wall, which like nobody wants to go there. Like Vijay mentioned before, OT people saying like, don't do that because that will affect safety. If you make sure that they understand that what they are doing will not affect safety, cybersecurity will not affect safety, then they will be happy to open up certain networks. So this is
All
important.
right. Okay, well, thank you very much. And with that, unfortunately, we're at the end of our time. What a ride, I can only say. And I would like to thank all of you for the rich contributions to the presentation and the panel. And on behalf of the organizers, I'd also like to thank you, Jesus, and Waterfall Security Solutions for sponsoring this event and making it possible. I hope it was interesting for our audience. And I see there's lots of questions there. Please do reach out to our speakers via the event organizers or via LinkedIn if you so desire. We could touch only a small part of this bigger puzzle. And with that, I'd like to hand over back to Jules.
Well, thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you for your skillful coordination of the debate, and thank you to all of the speakers. Jesus Molina, Vish Kasapura, Marilyn Bono, and Vijay Devnath. Thank you for all your contributions, and I think we had a very informative debate. Kind of things we don't get to kind of exchange notes between different operators often. So I think our audience will have had good experience listening to the debate. As Stefan said, we had a good number of questions coming from the audience, and we're running out of time. So can we invite the audience members to visit our LinkedIn page? We have a specific event page for this webinar. So you will be able to ask questions there, and if the speakers, if you could also, have a look at the page, and there may be some questions you may be able to answer in this LinkedIn space. So perhaps we could continue the debate on LinkedIn. So there's, if I could just introduce you to one last webinar that we have planned for this year before Christmas. So this is the final webinar of the 4-part series that we are running with Swiss Railways, SBB. So throughout this autumn, since September, we've been talking once a month about the power of digital to inspire rail passenger confidence. So we talked about healthy environment stations for passengers. We talked about digital nudge in October to encourage passengers to behave in certain ways. And we talked in November about station passenger flow management. So the last session, part 4, on the 16th of December, will be about smarter ticketing to bring rail passengers back safely. So this will be in 2 weeks' time, just before we break up for Christmas, at the time indicated there, 2 o'clock European time. In February, we will have an annual event that we've been running. Normally it's a physical event, but 10th International Railway Summit will be held online in the last week of February. So do contact us if you're interested in getting involved. More details are on the website, and speakers and attendees information will be listed soon on our website. So do get in touch if you like to speak or if you like to sponsor this event. So thank you very much to all the speakers, audience members, for this exciting, quite informative debate that we had this afternoon. And I hope you can join the next session in 2 weeks' time, right here at the International Railway Summit webinar series. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.